636, Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Dan Mandis here along with Jay Harper in for Joan. Jeff Malinoff producing this morning. Jonathan Fahey is on the Newsmaker Hotline, former director of the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And our guest, Jonathan, always great to have you on. I thought it was interesting, and I was telling folks about this letter that Stephen Miller's nonprofit, America First Legal, sending out to local authorities in places like California, San Francisco specifically, Los Angeles, all of these typical sanctuary cities and states, and he's warning them that they are putting themselves at significant legal risk if they interfere with Donald Trump's mass deportation. So it seems like a lot of people are calling this a shot across the bow. He sent it to L.A. Mayor Karen Bass, L.A. Police Department Chief Jim McDonnell, San Diego County Supervisor Nora Vargas, and many others, including the California Attorney General. I think that Stephen Miller, there's no doubt, everyone knows he is very much of a hawk when it comes to immigration. But would you agree that this was sort of like a shot across the bow, a warning shot, saying if you interfere with these things, then you put yourself at legal peril?
Yeah, I exactly agree. And Stephen Miller is so onto this issue, and I think learned a lot of lessons from the last Trump administration. And what's interesting is these jurisdictions, and they've been doing it the entire time during the Biden administration, and we're doing it during the Trump administration. Some of them are arguably in violation of the federal laws that he talked about, particularly this federal harboring statute, which makes it illegal to shield, to hide, to harbor somebody who's illegal alien from detection from ICE. So these sanctuary cities are in jeopardy if they continue doing what they're doing. And, my guess is once this administration gets up and running, they're going to open up grand jury investigations into some of these localities. And what they're going to be doing is investigating what they're doing to shield people from ICE detection, getting, rosters from their jails, having people testify, and things that these jurisdictions do not want. And I think the problem that they're going to run into is when they're trying to say, well, we're not doing this, we're actually not harboring illegal aliens, is everything they say publicly says a different story. The whole purpose of these policies is to keep illegal aliens, and they always say people in our community, from being deported or however they characterize it. So, yeah, I think it's a shot across the bow. And I do think one quick point, you're already going to see some of these jurisdictions are going to shift gears and they're going to lie and act like they're not. But you've already heard Governor Pritzker say something to the effect of course we want criminals deported. It's just we don't want, the other illegal aliens deported, which the whole point, as you know, and most of your listeners know, all these sanctuary cities have been doing has been harboring illegal aliens that were also convicted of crimes or arrested for crimes in their communities, because that's the only fault line in this whole thing has been they're preventing ICE from deporting people that are already in local jails, but they always characterize it as something else. Like they're not going to come up in our elementary schools and do raids, and like total nonsense.
Yeah, and I think part of what they do, and ICE has been, of course, complaining about this, and conservatives complain about this as well, is if they've got a bad guy, illegal alien, and he's in the local jail, ICE will come in and they'll request with the detainer to be able to take this guy into custody, and maybe they'll deport him or whatever. And what these local jurisdictions do is they refuse the detainer, and there are times when they just let them out and they're back out on the streets, and then innocent people get raped, murdered, robbed, whatever it is. And so they literally are putting, they keep saying, well, we're trying to keep our community safe. And my response to that would be, really? By harboring fugitives, I should say harboring, criminals, and then allowing them to go back out onto the streets and not letting ICE take care of business, that's not keeping people safe.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, they're totally lying about this. And this is what the Biden administration has done the whole time. What they want to have happen is massive illegal aliens coming into the country and mass amnesty. And they don't want to do anything to discourage people from coming here illegally. So if you say to people that are thinking of illegally coming to our country, that even if you commit the most serious crime, you're still welcome in our country to stay, it will do everything. It does so much to encourage illegal aliens to come here because they know that there couldn't be a bigger welcome mat if you could even commit a crime and stay. So that's what they're trying to do, is increase illegal aliens. They want a mass amnesty for all the people here, and the more people, whether they're convicted felons or not, if they could make them citizens, they're better off, at least the way they see it as a Democratic Party. But it's all about putting politics ahead of the safety of the community, but they have to lie about it, and that's what they have to do. They always try to come up with you remember under Mayorkas they come up with policies. We won't arrest anyone at a school or a hospital and all this nonsense that ICE had never done before, but they try to suggest that that's what ICE used to do, and they're portraying themselves as heroic from standing up to these fictional ICE abuses. It's so cynical. And the one last thing with the arrest, if you can't arrest them in jail, it puts people in the community at risk, because not only is the criminal out there committing new crimes, but if ICE has to go out into the community to arrest a dangerous person, their officers are at far greater risk out in the community than they would be picking up somebody from a jail, because at least in a jail, they're not armed, they won't be able to resist, and all these other things. So these policies put law enforcement at greater risk as well, but of course they don't even care. I mean, all they want is massive illegal aliens, and also the credit for standing up to Trump. So even when Trump's doing something that is good for the community, and 80%, probably more, would agree that getting criminals out of here is good for the community, they want to fight him because they'll fight Trump on anything. If Trump wanted to if he cured cancer, they wouldn't want people to have the cure, because they just want to fight him at every step of the way.
Yeah, I'm going to jump to traffic, but you're absolutely right. Mike Johnson, I played some audio earlier of Speaker Mike Johnson, and one of the questions he was asked is, do you believe that the Democrats in the House will be cooperating and helping the Republicans to execute Donald Trump's agenda? And he said something like, oh, yeah, I certainly hope so, and I think that they will. And I'm just sort of laughing, thinking, no, they won't. They are in stop Trump mode. I mean, clearly, the Democrats are in stop Trump mode, and they're not going to do anything that is going to give the Republicans or Donald Trump a victory in the House or the Senate or the White House, or quite frankly, in any state legislature across America. It's just not going to happen, because that's their mentality right now. 645 Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7. Jonathan Fahey is joining us. Time to check the roads on WTN. Thank you, Christy. As far as the weather for today, heavy winds during the day, mid-40s all day. It's going to be a low of about 40 degrees by midnight. Appreciate you listening to Nashville's Morning News on WTN. So, Jonathan, just a real quick final point on the whole illegal immigration thing. With this letter from Stephen Miller telling local authorities that they are putting themselves at legal risk if they interfere with mass deportation, do you see a possibility that they might actually come out and arrest people, like the mayor or the attorney general of California or the mayor of Los Angeles?
Yeah, I do think it is a possibility, and probably a pretty strong possibility that if they maintain these policies that are simply designed to keep people that are illegally in this country shielded from being deported, I think they will definitely be in the crosshairs. And I think one of the first things DOJ is going to do is open up grand jury investigations in these localities. And if these leaders of these cities are directing local law enforcement to not cooperate with ICE, I mean, they're going to have problems not only under the harboring statutes, but also obstruction of justice and other types of things. Because the thing that they're going to run into a problem with, if On other federal cases, if they cooperate with the federal authorities, whether it's ICE, FBI, or anything else, but only these particular offenses, in particular illegal aliens or other things related to that they don't, it just shows that their intention is very clearly to harbor illegal aliens. So unless they have a broad policy that's like, we never cooperate with the federal government in anything because it's resource intensive, and that's the way they try to characterize it, I think they're going to have massive problems, and they're going to have internal emails, internal meetings, discussions where they're going to specifically, which the federal government will get, which will show that their whole intention is to harbor illegal aliens and thwart Trump's administration from enforcement. So, yeah, I think they're going to be in major jeopardy, and I think a lot of them are going to yield on this issue a little bit, enough to at least get out of the crosshairs.
So a federal appeals court, moving on, has rejected that appeal by Donald Trump after that jury decision that he sexually abused and defamed E. Jean Carroll. And so Trump is, of course, going to appeal this. This is the $5 million in compensatory and punitive damages. This is that part of the lawsuit. And so Trump has appealed it. He has lost this appeal. And is this basically what's going to happen? Is this is going to make its way through the courts all the way up to, I mean, is it possible this goes up to the Supreme Court? Is that where this would go? I mean, how far does this go? Because Trump, in my opinion, he lost the original case and is going through very liberal appeals courts along the way. So where does this ultimately end up?
It could theoretically end up in the U.S. Supreme Court. It has to go through the whole state system first. And so I think in New York, the Court of Appeals is their highest court, but I'm not exactly sure. But I think, yeah, so to go through the state system, which you're exactly right, that these are liberal judges intent on, I can't speak for them individually, but it's probably a very liberal judicial system, very anti-Trump, as we've seen from the trial court, the two trials that we've had the opportunity to watch, the civil case, the Letitia James and the Alvin Bragg case. So, yeah, I think that's where it ultimately could end up. And this case, all of these cases are various degrees of nonsense, but this one seemed wholly unbelievable from the beginning. And it's just she was bankrolled, my understanding, from like some Democratic donors to pursue this case. So again, it just shows another politicization of the justice system, which really needs to stop. We've talked about a lot on the show. That's like, the citizens all lose when one side, politicizes the justice system.
It is 6:49, Nashville's Morning News. Okay, we've got like 1 minute left. What is your, here on New Year's Eve morning, looking back on 2024, there were so many stories that could be considered the biggest story of 2024. What is your biggest story of the year?
I would say, the Biden dropping out, the cognitive decline being, revealed to the American public. But one of my favorite stories, that I would say that might be the biggest, or Trump getting shot. But I think one of my favorite stories is the very last week of the election when Trump put on the garbage man suit or vest and went in the garbage truck because he totally jujitsu'd the Democrats' final move, which is so pathetic. Your final move in a campaign is to complain about something a comedian said, but he basically shoved it up, where, and it was brilliant. And I really felt like that was like he put the nail in the coffin of the 2024 election with that move.
All right, Jonathan Fahey, always great to have you on. We'll talk to you again in the new year. It is 6:51 on Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7. Jay Harper has the news coming up at 7 o'clock. Jay, what's up?
Yeah, Dan, a historic building in New Orleans has collapsed. We'll have that story. And also, President Biden will be delivering the eulogy for the late President Jimmy Carter at his memorial service. We'll have an update on that and more at 7 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.